Thank you, Jared, for all your support and guidance to make this possible. Thank you. Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for those that are online, that are checking this event out. This, as Jared already shared, is the panel discussion for my project, A Hug Away, A Breathing Temple of Love. My name is Lilian Aguilar Garcia. In the art world, I am known as Lilian Agar. I'm originally from the northern east of Mexico, and before moving to Salt Lake City in the summer of 2020, I was living in Los Angeles. My background is as graphic designer, and I also do interdisciplinary art, and currently I'm also a student of social work, and my major is in social work in the University of Utah. And because I am passionate about art, I'm passionate about human rights, is that I seek to create events, to create experiences where I can invite the audience, where I can invite my community to consider maybe topics that are awkward, maybe topics that are not as comfortable to talk about, like the case of domestic violence or suicide. It is not very easy, but it's a very important topic. So I'm very, very happy. Again, I want to say thank you to all of you who are having the opportunity to be here. I would like to invite you all, before we begin this panel discussion, please let's pause for a moment of silence to reflect and remember those who we couldn't help yesterday, those who are still suffering in silence today, those who have lost their lives because of mental health issues, injustice, COVID-19, or war. Let's take a moment, please. Welcome back. Now that Jared already helped to share a little bit of the panel about the what is the panel about, I will give the opportunity to the panelists to introduce themselves. I will start with Olivia, or I can start with Salvador. You can tell me. Who wants to go first? No tenga miedo. A ver, ya tienes el micrófono. Ok, a ver. Pásele.
6 minutes, right?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, okay. So my name is Salvador Torres, and I am here. I'm one of the panelists. So I am Latino, I am undocumented, and I am queer. Those are just some things I always, mention because that's something I always had to deal with growing up. And my area specialty is I do a lot of community involvement. I work for Salt Lake Community College. I work with their day center, so I do work a lot with college students. But also my background up until working with SLC has been working with different nonprofits. So I work with Utah Pride Center, Encircle, Comunidades Unidas, so just a background in many different organizations that deal with different folks. And my main focus has always been LGBTQ individuals that are also marginalized with different groups. So undocumented, being a part of the Latinx community, folks who are experiencing hard of hearing and deaf, and the list goes on. So.
Hi, my name is Ariel Malin. I use she or they pronouns, and I personally identify as a queer femme person. My background, I currently work in healthcare administration, so a lot of the experiences that I'm probably going to share tonight are going to be through a healthcare systems lens. and how LGBTQ plus people navigate and access healthcare, specifically mental health care, in regards to suicide prevention. I also co-founded and run a queer hiking group here in Utah, and we are everywhere from Logan to Provo, and it's really just been a space to provide a community a safe place to be in the outdoors. So those are kind of two of my main things. My passion in life is really LGBTQ plus health. And similar to Salvador, I do a lot of community advocacy and education around those specific topics.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patricia Aguayo. I'm Latina. I'm a physician. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I work at the university in the Department of Psychiatry and now Huntsman Mental Health Institute. I use he, she pronouns, but due to my line of work, I've interfaced with LGBTQ community. Specifically, my interaction is the sad part when they come to the psychiatric hospital after a suicide attempt or in crisis, or so I've kind of been exposed to the suffering that goes on, the lack of resources, understanding, the stigma around all of this, and I'm hopeful through working together we can make some changes and support people that need help when they're most vulnerable or when they're being really brave and telling people what's going on inside and it doesn't go well. So my take that I will have here. Thank you.
Well, hello and good evening. My name is Jose Borjon. I'm Mexican. I'm actually a Mexican government official because I'm the head consul of the Consulate of Mexico here in the state of Utah, and we do have a very important population of around over 300,000. And through our office, and that's what I hope I can share, we have a commitment to serve all, and I will share how we try to acknowledge the different identities of the Mexican immigration that are here in the state, and this way how we can do a better job serving them. So that's something I'd like to put here through our participation, and the end job is always for us, how do we build community, and that's why I'm so much appealed being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for going first, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, and good evening, everybody. My name is Olivia Jaramillo. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as, I was born and raised in Mexico. I identify as Latinx, and I currently am the Director of Public Outreach at Equality Utah. And a lot of the work that I do is reaching out to organizations, corporations, companies, anybody, wherever there has been a lack of intersectionality. And not just a queer intersectionality, but really an intersectionality of different ethnicities and races. And I feel it's important to bring that, to start dispelling notions that people may have of people of color, of immigrants, of even the queer community. And that is what I feel very strongly about.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. I am incredibly humble and honored to share space with all of you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I want to make one moment just to remind the audience, because there's new faces. There is a page with a QR code, with some QR codes. I don't know if it is still around, because that is important for people to scan. So that will take you all to my website, where you can see a presentation, which is what I'm going to be talking about, so you can have a better understanding of it. Now, I will talk briefly about how it all started. How it all started in which sense? In anyone's life. As I shared earlier, I am currently studying with a major in social work in the University of Utah. And in one of my classes, I learned about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if anyone have heard of them, but if you can see the presentation, you are gonna see a triangle with different colors. And in that triangle, you are gonna have self-actualization at the very top. Then you are gonna have esteem, then is love and belonging, then safety, and lastly, physiological. In this case, we are all starting from the bottom, which means we first need food, we need clothing, we need where to live, like basic needs. After that, we start considering, okay, my health, I have the money to do this, I can get a job, I can check my transportation, and we go eventually through all these levels. However, as Olivia was mentioning just then, intersectionality plays an incredible role in this. Why? Because there is this idea that because maybe someone is white and lives in an urban area is not gonna struggle as much, or because the person, etc. Like, what I want to invite you all is to consider the other aspects. Maybe the person is an immigrant. Maybe the race of the person is a struggle for them to have the proper treatments, because unfortunately we are still struggling with that, with stops, with situations that make it harder for specific minority populations to get the resources they need, to get the support they need. And unfortunately, it all starts from home. So is this what I would like to focus? How can we the people, can we take action or start action from home, from our relatives, to our partners, to the people that we are around? Now, the main point of this panel is to cover the three aspects that I was just talking about, which is education, advocacy, and community organization, and overall well-being. Now that you will have a better understanding of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in which people will go from survival to personal realization, you all can check the scenarios that I had in the presentation. The panelists will share in short. They might or might not choose one of these biographies or scenarios. These scenarios are fake. It's important for you to know. These scenarios are fake. However, the scenarios are made with real life experiences that or the subjects or I went through, because I wanted you all to recognize that there are situations, there are events that do happen. That is not just something far away. No, this is what is happening in our community. How can we avoid these situations to not escalate? Now, I would like to invite any of the panelists. Would you like to go in order, or do you want to just start, any of you? Who would like to start? I will choose. I'll do it. Okay. There you go.
You know, it's actually a technique, because then you're not the last, and you've got people more interested. No, but I think, and please allow me just to put my timer here. Okay. Well, I wanted to start because we are a governmental organization, and so sometimes, even when I approached how could I come to this conversation with something meaningful, and it really brought me to think. But I loved how we began with the Maslow hierarchy of needs, because a consulate and again, this is a governmental organization. As an institution, it has, as any series of challenges and hierarchies and what it represents. But a consulate and us here in the state of Utah, we approach those who come to us through let's say, an interest of service. And as we serve, how can we do that in creating a safe zone, a safe space in our office, in our premises? And that's why, the safety and physiological part is so basic when people come to our consulate. Safety because they need their Mexican documents. Safety because they need the protection of their human rights and civil rights. And safety because they need to have the basic needs sometimes covered, and that's where they'll come to the office, they'll tell us about their circumstances, and through our very limited resources, we'll try to find how can we help them. Maybe it's funds, maybe it's legal aid, maybe it's reference to many of the community organizations that we've been talking and we will be sharing, who are natural partners in building this community and protecting our persons. And so that's like how can an office approaches these challenges through the physiological and safety part. But then again, this team, this idea of you are an immigrant who is living here, and if you are member of the LGBTQ community plus, what are your challenges and how can we serve you? And that's first just being a safe space, learning about your needs, which are sometimes in this safety and physiological the same, but also specific. And that's where we partner with great organizations, Latino Behavioral Health, coming every Wednesday to our consular premises and talking with those who have certain needs, challenges, inviting people to take care of themselves, kind of working on the preventive side, especially with immigrants who are here and have a lot of challenges, a lot of different vicious and sometimes circumstances that bring them into different qualities. But also how can we as an office build the sense of love, of belonging, and that for an immigrant sometimes it's working on your self-esteem, but also your connection to your heritage, no? And that's why a greater challenge of an office like us is going beyond the first generation, those Mexican Americans who are here in the United States, and even a third generation. How do we connect? How do we respect their needs and at the same time offer them something that brings them back to their heritage? And we do it through also a lot of programs in the community, education, health, and cultural areas. So this is also how a consulate presents itself in this conversation. We are an area of service. We see the many challenges that are out there. And I don't know if we should talk about a case or do okay, because that's of interest. How do we do it? Obviously with service protecting their human rights in the many areas, labor exploitation, harassment, discrimination, especially for LGBTQ, and they should have a safe place to come to us, and we build a bridge with law enforcement so that they can follow in those. Obviously, hate crimes is of our most interest to fight, and that's where we also have been very active with other organizations in advocacy, especially in the last 3 years. Well, a new legislation was being brought up here at the Utah State Capitol, but also, of course, immigrants and domestic violence you were mentioning. Well, obviously, LGBTQ are also part of domestic violence victims. So we are trained, and when I say we, is many of my colleagues who are also here at the consulate with lethality assessment programs, so that we know how dangerous it can be, the situation. And we have a good, obviously, communication with law enforcement, as it should, because, for example, 2 years ago, ICE, the Immigration Enforcement Agency, had detained a trans person, and they didn't know what to do with them, and they called us, and we helped in the process of getting them out of this space and bringing the with her mother back to Mexico. So those are the kind of everyday dynamics that we find in our office that helps put a conversation of the need of safe space, of how this hierarchy of needs can be addressed through institutions, in this case us and the consulate, but should be a discussion that goes also into any other institutions. We obviously are, and when we saw the different cases, we were interested specifically on the case of Rene, the Mexican American, and his differences. Sorry, that's me. Okay. and what we see in this example is, how could we help? How could we as an institution? Well, first, he can be a dual citizen, so he must have a birth certificate. He's a minor, so we should look if there's abuse and work with the institutions like DCFS to see how we can protect this person, and eventually how can we help him navigate into the resources out there in the community which are culturally sensitive to his needs. So that's why I think organizations that are like Latino Behavioral that are very clearly identifying the needs of mental health through a view. It's an example, not the only one. And from there on, specific things that a consulate can do, like financial assistance. If he decides to return to Mexico, we can repatriate. And that's how we approach these challenges. We are not a mental health organization, but we are a reservoir of connections. We want to be a safe space that communicates those needs and presents with the options in any community. And this is just an example. We are a network of 50 consulates in the United States, pretty much doing the same. So we're not like any extraordinary, but we're this service oriented because it's a vulnerable population, immigrants, and of course LGBTQ immigrants as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, the QR code will take you to the website. I would like to ask you guys, would you feel comfortable? Would you want me to read the biographies, or do you want to check them directly on the phone? Like on the phone? Okay, perfect. I just wanted to be mindful. Who wants to go second? I will choose. You want to go second?
Okay. Hello? Yes, okay. Hi. So thank you so much for what you said, Consul. It was, I'm used to using humor to deflect, and I'm sure maybe some of you are familiar with that, and I'm used to hiding behind my professionalism or anything like that, but a lot of what has been mentioned really hit home, and even what the Consul mentioned hit home, and I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I was born and raised there. And oh my gosh, and I miss home. And it was difficult to leave home. I didn't want to come here. I was brought here. I've always had to, very much to what you said about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I've always added the sense of belonging into the very bottom one, the foundation, because that is what, as immigrants, at least my experience as an immigrant, has always been trying to find that sense of belonging, and it seems we do find it. We have great allies in white people and black people, whatever. In all sorts of people, you find great allies, but it's almost like that sense of belonging is always something that is missing. I can't find it, and it brings a lot of nostalgia for my country and my family. Oh, wow. It's hard. Yeah, that's it. I'll cry more if I keep going. Sorry.
Muchísimas gracias, Olivia. Thank you very much. I appreciate a lot what you just shared, because I understand that I also born in Mexico. I arrived in 2016, and I understand that the sense of belonging, it can be very hard when you arrive to a new country, and on top of adapting to a new language, adapting to a new culture, adapting to slang, to humor, to everything that is there out there. And sometimes, no matter, the feeling that stays is that it doesn't matter what you do, you're always the other. You're always the outsider. And it gets harder when, on top of you being an immigrant, you being from a different ethnicity, from a different race, you living in a different place, you're also queer. I forgot to mention that, I'm sorry, in my introduction, I myself identify as a queer person. My pronouns are she, they. I grow up with invalidation until the age of 22. Of, that's just a phase, it's okay. Of my own parents telling me that I needed to choose because it was vulgar. And what happened is that that type of invalidation, that type of vocabulary, that type of not really respectful or understanding love, let their relatives or let this person understand and know the message that is captured is, oh, I don't deserve. Oh, I am a problem. Oh, I am less than. And what happened, which at least it was in my experience and in some others, you end up in an abusive relationship. It is a cycle. And then what happened is that the person that might not have gone through therapy because to work on their gender identity or their the gender expression, they end up going because they are victimized by someone else that will abuse them physically, verbally, psychologically, economically, you name it. There are more ways of abuse than what most people think is not just the punch in the eye. There's so much more, and the most invisible it is, the most dangerous it is. Because then the person end up in a trap. And because the person is already seen as a problem, as you are gonna later recognize your own thing. When are you gonna get it together? When and how is this person supposed to identify their own self-worth, their own self-value? How can we create that in our community to be recognized nationally with these other values? I will now, sorry that I went into my rant. I just, thank you. I think you mentioned a very important aspect of this, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you. Any of you would like to go after?
So in reflecting what you guys have talked about, I wanted to take this from your Maslow's. So belonging, I would like to start there, and I agree. And I see a lot of these struggles as a journey. It's not something that's a flash in time. So these are years and years and years that people go through this suffering, this feeling lonely, as you're saying, not worth. Mm-hmm. But then the next step, if you think about it, it's self-recognition. So that's where I think we can really leave a mark, right? So I talked about all these kids. So usually all of this happens when you're a teenager. It's usually, for any kid, it's rough times. It's kind of like figuring out who you are, where you're gonna be. If you're an immigrant, forget it, right? So there's all these things you have to fit into, and it kind of like all of them, they put you down, right? To the point, imagine that you're 13 and you think that your only way out is to hang yourself, you know? and it's more common than we think. I'm going to give my statistic because I know that shocks a lot of people, but in Utah, the number one cause of death in the age group from 10 to 18 is suicide. So there's a lot of people out there suffering, and I think this is just like one of the spots that's causing all this suffering and pain. But after this sense of needing to belong, which I think is the main trigger, is this self-acceptance. So I think this is where we can make a difference, educating people, talking openly about stigma, lending a hand. Sometimes these kids, and especially I feel really bad, and I'm working very hard with bringing Huntsman Mental Health Institute and working with the Latino communities, because I think even if they end up in the hospital after a suicide attempt, they kind of like just fall through the cracks when they leave. So I would like to embrace the Latino community a little bit more. So there's places where they can go, seek help, find help, and educate the community as well. They're not welcoming. The culture doesn't welcome LGBTQ. It's very hard. So again, think of all these needing to belong, and there's like, how many have we counted already? You're an immigrant, you're brown, your parents are not going to be okay. So, I mean, there's all these things. And then I've had the pleasure, since I work with adults as well, of people that have actually been able to fight their war and see their worth through treatment and through psychiatric help and therapy, and they become really brave and resilient people, and that's the value of this journey, resilience. And then I love the last one is be the best self that you can be. And I feel that people that have challenges and have overcome them and have been brave and kept going, and I don't know, they just become so brave and willing to help others in their journey that they're invaluable people. It's rare that you find people so motivated and willing to help others along the journey. And it's a long, long journey. So I think if we can help even just one person, throw them a lifeline when they're really struggling or they need it, I think we can make a big, big difference helping them make that jump to self-acceptance or being the best that you can be. So those are my 3 cents. It's very sad to see what really happens and how much suffering there is. And then my big specialty is with, since we're talking about diversity, I'm going to bring it out. I work with people with autism. That's my main thing. And so they're neurodiverse. So it's another area of being different. So I've recently learned this actually, but there's a very high number of people with autism that are struggling with self-identity and gender, etc. So it's an area of interest of mine as well for that reason, and helping people be their best self. How can we get them there no matter where they came from, what their brain works like, and how can we help them be their best? That's, hopefully we can put all our efforts together and bridge, throw people some lifelines when they're struggling so they can get there. Okay? Thank you.
So I'll just add a few thoughts. So I also botched my introduction because I didn't even tell you where I worked. And that's what I wanted to share with y'all. So I work at the University of Utah with the Transgender Health Program. And the reason I think that's relevant is because in